Hey Metas, we've got a pretty decent update today, so let's get into it. The point at the very end is going to be the most interesting, so make sure you stick around. So, development update, pollution zone revamp, gameplay tweaks, and mod conversion adjustments. Yeah. Dear Metas, since the launch of Oncehuman, we've carefully reviewed your feedback on repetitive exploration, resource surpluses, and challenges with mod acquisition. And I will say quickly before we get into this, I came off of playing mostly Destiny before I came to Oncehuman, and I do have to say that whatever you want to say about the devs, they do listen and actually change things, as opposed to other games where they either seem to say they're going to do something and don't, or completely do the opposite of what has been asked by the community. So, to address these issues, we refined the core exploration and progress experience. On March 27th, we'll roll out updates including a pollution zone revamp, new gameplay experiences, resource balancing, and mod conversion improvements. Our goal is to deliver a better gaming experience to all players. In this article, we'll preview some of these changes and optimizations. We'd love to hear your feedback on these updates, so let us know what you think. Pollution zone adjustments. Pollution zones were originally designed to provide players with an evolving survival experience during exploration. However, we recognize that the current contamination and sanity mechanics feel too static and predictable, diminishing the richness and depth of exploration. To fix this, we've overhauled these mechanics as follows. Number 1, Stardust ore can suppress and absorb contamination, and will appear in areas with high contamination. Items and structures crafted using Stardust ore are super effective against deviants. Stardust ore in the environment will also continuously weaken nearby deviants. Number 2, mining Stardust ore triggers a gradual rise in local contamination levels, which only stops when the Stardust ore respawns, restoring its suppressive effect. Number 3, the rules for contamination and pollution zones have been adjusted. Sanity now starts at 1000 and drains at a rate of contamination level minus pollution resist per second. When sanity drops below a certain level, and they don't specify what that is here, a special deviant will attack, and you must use Stardust ore or crafted items to repel them. And I'm going to assume this is the special deviant that they are referring to. So, how do you repel them? Number 4, a new structure has been added, Veil of Tranquility. Once connected to power, it will expend its own durability to provide sanity protection to nearby players, while simultaneously weakening nearby deviants. Note, the number on the backpack reflects the area's current contamination level. So, they do say structure, which means, and because it needs to be connected to power, this seems like something that needs to be at your base. Or you could connect it on one of your large vehicles, mobile territories, and maybe drive that around and have you protected as you are out there mining things. Stardust ore is going to become a lot more important, especially when we get into some of the lower points in this article. So you're going to probably be wanting to farm this a lot more, and this structure seems like it's going to be a great way to protect yourself. They say that you need to use Stardust ore to repel them. It almost sounds like these deviants might be nearly or actually impossible to repel without these special Stardust items. That's purely speculation on my part, but we'll see. Definitely interesting. I love it when they add new things into the game and just keeps it interesting. Now, Rosetta Settlement. While exploring the high difficulty Rosetta settlement areas, a Rosetta Secret Convoy event may be randomly triggered. If you steal the Convoy crate from Rosetta, you will be hunted by a large number of Rosetta elites, and you must evade their pursuit until the Convoy crate is unlocked. The Convoy crate contains a large amount of control units, not controllers, those are going away. They'll explain later what those mean. Those can be used to craft bullets and tactical items. Now, before we get into that, I will quickly note, when I was reading this, at first I thought, okay, so you grab the crate, you're being hunted down, log out of the game, and just come back in however later, and you can just sort of cheese that. But it does sound like you actually have to stay in and fight them off, or honestly, either you'll probably lose the crate, or if you log back in, that timer for it to unlock might just start when you log back in. I doubt it's going to probably be that difficult for you to need to cheese it, but it was just a funny thought I had, and then found out, it's probably not going to work. So, gameplay optimizations, anti-type effects, and this is pretty big because these anti-type effects are things like anti-phase, anti-void. It's also referring to penetration and other things like that, which you would normally have on a specific weapon, and that specific weapon would do more damage to specific enemies. So it sort of forced your hand if you really wanted to min-max what type of weapons you had to use against which enemies. So what they're saying now is we want to give players more freedom in utilizing anti-type effects that are strong against deviants or humanoid enemies. Therefore, these effects are no longer restricted to specific weapons. Instead, players can craft bullets and tactical items with various anti-type effects using in-game resources. So, number 1, basic rules. Using Stardust ingots to craft bullets and tactical items will grant them anti-deviant effects, while using control units to craft these items will grant them anti-humanoid effects. So this is where I was saying you're going to probably be wanting to farm a lot more Stardust ore than you did in the past, because this is going to give you a really nice advantage against deviants. Not only, farming things in pollution zones, that's great too, but it's also going to give you offensive, not just against the special enemies that are going to come up when you're farming, but it sounds like any deviants are going to be able to be dealt more damage when you have these items. Number 2, anti-type bullets suppression AP ammo, which is strong against deviants, and penetration AP ammo, strong against humanoids. These anti-type bullets deal massive amounts of bonus damage to the HP and shields of the corresponding enemy types, including super anomalies. These effects, non-elemental damage, impact, penetration, and suppression, which used to be on weapons, have also been removed from all weapons. Additionally, non-elemental damage bonuses provided by fur have been replaced with weapon damage. So I almost think that might be somewhat of a slight nerf, because if it was previously a separate multiplier and now it's being added to your weapon damage multiplier, that might actually dip it down a little bit, but at least it's not going to make it completely worthless on items you've already crafted. Number 3, other combat item adjustments. All offensive tactical items can now be crafted with anti-type effects. So that means things like drones, Molotovs, grenades, anything that you can create, the turrets, anything you can create that will do damage offensively can now be extra damage against deviants or extra damage against humanoids. So new tactical items, these are in addition to what we've previously had. Due to the changes to anti-type effects and the introduction of new high difficulty dungeons on March 27th, we are introducing a new combat option, rare tactical items. And later in the article, they say that these are exclusive to PvE, because as I read this first one, I can see a lot of PvP players immediately going, what the, as they read this. So, Shield Matrix. Omnidirectional defense device activate. Gosh, that's hard to say. Deploys a large protective shield at the user's location. The shield completely blocks all incoming bullets and projectiles, but metahumans within it can still fire outward. However, the shield does not prevent enemies from passing through. So, as they're showing in this gameplay clip right now, you use it against a boss that generally stays in one location or keeps distance from you, doesn't run up into you like the regular trash mobs do, you're basically going to be invincible. They don't say how long it lasts. They don't say if it is a time-based thing or if it's going to be durability based on the number of damage dealt to it. But as you can see here in the gameplay clip, very strong in helping you survive those new higher difficulties. All right, the next new item they have here is Mr. Wish's rocket launcher. Still struggling to calculate offset? Let's try a different approach. Mr. Wish's rocket launcher is equipped with Mr. Wish's Advanced guidance technology, allowing you to control the rocket's trajectory and precisely strike the enemy. Note, due to Mr. Wish's deviation powers, he is not harmed during this process. Please do not try this at home. And as you can see in this gameplay clip here, it appears to be very strong. It shows this rocket taking out an Eve in one hit, but I am very skeptical of that actually being possible. That would be outrageously strong. And one thing that's really hard to note here, and you might miss it if you're not paying close attention, but it's not just a rocket. The rocket impacts, and there you see there was a cluster bomb that was released. It looks like it might be on any enemy there, so it might be more clusters based on the number of enemies in the area, or it might be a fixed amount. It might just be how they've shown these guys set up. It looks like the cluster is based on the number of enemies in the area, but we'll have to try it and find out. Next new item for all of you pyromaniacs out there is the Wildfire Flamethrower. Stop using this thing for barbecues. You'll burn yourself. This flamethrower employs cutting-edge fuel and catalytic technology to produce higher temperature flames with an extended range. Be careful, do not burn yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, that these are all PvE exclusive items, so you can't use that outrageously strong shield generator in PvP or any of these other items. Next is new Memetic Specialization items. Currently, only biomass missiles and plasma rounds are effective against the Manibus's Silver Plague shield in the Prime War game mode. To add more strategic options, 3 new Memetic Specialization items are now available: red plasma rocket warheads, red plasma grenades, and red antiviral ammo. So number 1, red plasma rocket warheads and red plasma grenades are compatible with the RPG-7 rocket launcher and the grenade launcher respectively. So those grenades are not ones that you can carry around and throw, they are ammo for the grenade launcher. And significantly increase their damage against the Silver Plague shield. This allows you to dominate the Prime War without crafting turrets. Now, what I would like to know, and they don't specify here, is the silver rounds currently, the red plasma rounds, they have a decay time, so they last for a limited period of time. I would assume that these are going to be the same. That's not necessarily a big deal because you can leave some pre-crafted in synthesis benches. I'm going to assume these would be synthesis as well. So you can always just claim them when you're ready to actually use them. But that's just a note there as they don't specify it, but I would assume they're in the same category. The red plasma grenade will replace the ultra grenade specialization, while the red plasma rocket warhead will replace the high power warhead specialization. I honestly don't even remember the ultra grenade specialization, but I will say that the high power warhead specialization is essentially useless. I have never tried using it because I don't understand why I would want to use the rocket launcher in PvE when I could use biomass missiles. So yeah, it's going to be nice to have a specialization that I'm actually considering using. So not only do you have more options of getting something that will damage the shields, meaning you're probably going to be more able to free up your memetic cleansers for other things you want. But as I said, you don't have to use a turret. You can actually run around and use these wherever. So that's going to be interesting. Always happy to have more variety in the game. Now this next item, red antiviral ammo, they don't say plague here. So it seems what they're referring to is the health. It might do extra damage to the Silver Plague shields as well, but I'm personally reading this as regular damage to their health. So it deals massive damage to the original entity bosses and is highly effective against the OE kin summoned by the Manibus in Nightmare difficulty and above. Right now, I don't see why this would actually be necessary. Even the highest level Prime Wars, most of the bosses go down real fast if you're on a moderately populated server. But because they're going to be introducing the Apocalypse mode, maybe that's where you're really going to be wanting to use this. Now, resource balance adjustments. To address early game scarcity and late game resource surplus, and to balance for the depreciation of controllers on March 27th, we've adjusted resource acquisition rates as follows. They also don't mention the permanent servers, but I would assume that that is also why they're adjusting the end game, because now the end game is going to be infinite. Increased the resource yield of early and mid-game stages, which will be shorter on most scenarios based on the earlier announcements they've made, while reducing the resource yield of late-game stages. Affected resources include energy links, Stardust source, and barreled premium fuel. I will say that I don't think that anyone is going to necessarily be super thrilled about the nerf to the end game farming of these things. However, again, if you're on a non-shutdown server, very likely that it's not going to matter that much to you because you're going to have infinity to farm them. Number 2, increased the value of resources obtained from pollution zones, such as Stardust ore, but reduced their respawn frequency. Number 3, adjusted the conversion rates of some Memetic Specializations, including sulfur chemist and oil processing. Now, later they go on to explain that in a little bit more detail, and I think what they're talking about is how efficient these are based on what they say later. Detailed yield adjustments. Securement silos, dungeon, Leia Research Labs. I missed that the first time through. All right, so normal and hard, Stardust source plus 20%, energy links plus 20%. Pro, Stardust source yield reduced by about 10%. And if I am correct, the Leia Research Labs currently is a pro level difficulty, level 60. So I'm assuming that that's why they're including Leia in this. Leia will be nerfed by about 10% for your energy yield, energy link yield, and the Stardust source. So you're going to be a little bit harder to farm things. It does say that pro difficulty still offers the highest resource acquisition efficiency than the lower levels, and I would assume that the Nightmare and Apocalypse will also be higher level as well. But I mean, I don't think anybody's super thrilled about this. Again, if you're on a non-shutdown server, it's probably not going to matter. Prime War, basically the same thing. Normal and hard, Stardust source plus 10%, premium barrel premium fuel plus 20%. And number 2, Pro and Nightmare, Stardust source minus 10%, barreled premium fuel minus 20. Chaos Weavers. Number 1, scenario phases 2 and 3, the Stardust source is plus 10%, but in scenario phase 4, Stardust source minus 10%. Evolution's Call, Engagement Zone, Stardust source, production efficiency and storage limit plus 10%. Number 2, barreled premium fuel, production efficiency and storage limit minus 15%. All right, public crisis events. Number 1, Stardust source yield increased by about 20%. Number 2, high risk Stardust source yield increased by about 10%. So this one is one where they are not nerfing anything. The public crisis events are only going to have their resource yield buffed. So it might be the case that these could become the most efficient way to gain those resources, especially certain ones that you can crank out fairly quickly. We'll see. I kind of doubt it, but at least you're getting a buff there on something that you're probably doing regularly to get those special mods. High-risk public crisis events will also yield rubber. Now, Memetic Specializations, this is what they were referring to when they were talking about the conversion. Number 1, oil processing. Stardust ore consumption reduced from 50 to 25. And that is a huge buff. It's basically going to be 50% more effective in terms of the Stardust ore that it requires. That's huge. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be upset by number 2. Sulfur Chemist production time increased from 5 to 8 minutes. That's about a 60% nerf. And energy link consumption increased from 50 to 100, which is a 100% increase. And number 3, Stardust mining platform efficiency now fluctuates slightly based on contamination levels. I would assume that this means in some of the lowest contamination levels, it's actually going to be less efficient. And in the higher levels, it's going to be more efficient than it currently is at base level. So if you have that and you like using it, that's going to be probably buffed overall because you're going to probably try to be in the highest level contamination zones anyway. Oil processing getting a huge buff, and sulfur chemists getting a huge nerf. Now, these material point adjustments, I believe they are referring to the amounts of material resources required to transfer from Eternal Land from your space-time backpack into your regular backpack. I don't know that it's going to matter too much. They haven't specified on the non-shutdown servers. I assume that you only have the same amount that you start out with. And on a non-shutdown server, you're going to eventually hit a point where you've used them all. And the rates at which you can convert these are going to kind of become moot. You're going to be on a non-shutdown server where you're able to just farm anything you need. So being able to transfer anything from your space-time backpack is probably going to end up becoming not something that you consider. It would only really be meaningful if you start like the Endless Dream scenario when that comes out and you are transferring things. However, these are all, they're referring to resources. They're not referring to things like deviations or really any of the things that you should transfer. All they're referring to are resources which you really shouldn't spend your transfer points on because they're very inefficient to transfer. So acid 10 to 8 points, a little bit of an improvement there, but I'm not going to be using it. Stardust source is up from 2 to 3 points. Barrel premium fuel from 100 to 80 points. Stardust ore from 20 to 30 points. Beryllium crystal 100 to 80 points. Vanadium crystal 150 to 120 points. Iridium crystal 200 to 160 points, and platinum crystal 250 to 200. So the one thing there that's going to be a little nice is if you are somebody who likes to try to craft higher level gear before you really had the time to explore the higher level points of interest, you might be able to get some of that gear a little faster and get that higher level exploration done quicker. But again, I don't recommend that you spend transfer points on resources. Now, the biggest thing in this article, here we go, the thing that I'm most excited for, and I'm sure most people are looking for the most, is your mod conversion adjustments. We've heard your frustrations about the grind for high rarity mods. With the depreciation of controllers, we're overhauling the mod conversion system to improve fairness and accessibility. Number 1, increase the overall probability of obtaining high level mods. That is great. Number 2, when converting mods from the lowest initial level, there is now a chance of obtaining mods with epic attributes. So essentially what that's going to mean is for mods that you would probably otherwise shred because they're going to give you bad rarity mods, currently they now look like they're going to be able to give you a higher chance of higher level. We'll see how efficient that actually is if you're on a non-shutdown server and you can farm energy links infinitely, and maybe you start to get to the point where you kind of don't care about spending your resources that way. This might be helpful. I'm sort of on the fence of how significant that's going to be though. And number 3, the higher the total initial level of the mods being converted, the higher the minimum rarity of the mods obtained, and the greater chance of obtaining high rarity mods. What I am not hearing here is I am not hearing that you will be able to get a higher rarity than you are currently able to get. What I am hearing is the chance of obtaining the highest current level is going to be increased. Not that the ceiling is going up, not that you're going to be able to convert 3 legendary substats in an epic. I am hearing that the chance of getting something like a purple and 3 blues, or a purple and 2 blues, 1 green, like something like that, is going to be more likely to happen than it currently is. I am not hearing the ceiling is going up. What I am also unfortunately not hearing, and this is the part that I would like to see the most, is especially something like the Apocalypse and Nightmare silos, where I'm sorry, the Apocalypse Primor and Nightmare Silos, where those have a weekly limit on the increased rewards that you can get. What I would really like to see is to have a better odd of getting the substat you want. Getting a higher level mod is great, but if it's always a higher level of something that you absolutely do not need, which happens unfortunately a very high number of times, that's not great. You're also not going to be getting as many mods because you're not going to have controllers. So I'm not sure if this is going to really help us that much. What I would really like to see, especially if it is a time limited thing, or if there's some way to spend extra resources so you really have to farm hard to do it, is to be able to specify what substat you would like to see occurring. I mean, you can already do that in the conversions, yes, but B, maybe what other substats you can see, specify those a little more, or at the very least, improve the odds of getting a high level of what you're converting. I mean, I guess technically that is what they are saying, that you can use lower level mods to get a high level conversion, and the odds just in general of getting those high level mods are increased. But I'd really like to be able to specify which substat that impacts, because if I keep doing this and get something that only impacts PvP attributes and I hardly ever do anything PvP, well, that doesn't help me much. So we'll see what ends up happening, but definitely, I mean, any increase on trying to improve the mods that you want is good. It is a step in the right direction, do not get me wrong. I'd like to see them do some more, so contact them on social media, let them know what you think, and we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have not checked out my Burn versus Surge video on screen now, please do so. Thanks so much.